Hi, I'm Mike Schrage, president of GNPI, Good News Productions International. And over the next couple of weeks, we're going to have the opportunity to visit with you through video to share with you individuals that are sharing their lives in the midst of the coronavirus and what lessons they've learned, what lessons they're learning, and just how we can continue to be Jesus in the everyday situations, whether you're president of a Bible college, the former founder of a nonprofit organization, or you're a housewife or a business entrepreneur. We're going to talk to them and you hear their insights into what they're learning in life today. And I have the honor today to be with my father-in-law and founder of GNPI, Ziden Nutt. Ziden, welcome.
Thank you.
One of the things we wanted to just have as an opportunity was to just hear from people who have given us experiences and have been down this road before. You know, we're talking about the coronavirus and how it's impacted every piece of our lives. And Ziden knows those things, and his generation knows those things, and we should learn from their experiences as well and take encouragement from it. And so, Ziden, just tell us a little bit about, I know as a young child, you remember World War II and how it impacted you, your family. Tell us a little bit about that to lay a little context of how it felt in those days, because we're, as they say, at war with the coronavirus. So explain how it was with a war you experienced.
I think the backdrop to World War II is very important. The United States of America had just come out of the Great Depression. We had learned in the USA how to help one another, meet one another's needs, and there was a unity there of care and national unity. So when I was born in 1936, I was just 5 years old when war was declared on December 7th, when Pearl Harbor was bombed. And so I remember particularly a little bit later when I was in school. I started school in 1942, and schools were dismissed, not because of the war exactly or any panic. I mean, the public perception and panic did not set in because we didn't have all the media to create that kind of thing. But we school children took our noon hours, recess times, and stayed after school. We went out and gathered milk pods, and we were thrilled to do that, fill gunny sacks with milk pods that were then taken to a company, well, in my case in Quincy, Illinois, where they made parachutes for the war.
Oh, wow.
And so we were all involved as one nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all.
Right.
And we were all in this war together. And today we're in this war together. We went through a time where sugar was rationed. Many things were rationed. We had to have coupons, and just so many coupons to buy gasoline. On the farm, my dad was still using horses in the field, and so his coupons weren't used in a tractor, so he shared those with neighbors. Neighbors shared others with us, maybe for sugar if we were short. And so there was this give and take that was really refreshing, even though times were very difficult and rationing made things very difficult.
So if I'm hearing you, Ziden, you're saying as a young child, boy, there were some things that really impacted you, but the element of shortages really created unity and created this deal of wanting to share with one another. And today we may have shortages in the fact that we aren't able to travel the way we used to, but we can now share. We can go ahead and help people who maybe don't have a babysitter, who have kids at home. There's that same principle that you said you learned in your generation, that we get to apply that today to our own lives and to our own situation here. Ziden, tell me a little bit more also about when you and Helen went to the mission field, and today we have this sense of being isolated and it's all me and I'm alone, and rightly so, there's this self-quarantine element. But as a Christian and as a mission worker that you were going over to Africa on, there had to be times when you felt isolation. Tell us what you learned from that as well.
Well, I think coming out of World War II, where we saw unity among people, we were prepared for most anything we thought. But then driving down this road, ending up 63 miles from the nearest little town, we were out there in the middle of nowhere, but we were among a people, and I think that was key as well. We were among a people who loved one another. They all felt they were related. We were all under one chief. And true, we didn't get supplies every day. In fact, our post office was 63 miles away. We got our mail maybe every 4 weeks, maybe every 6 weeks. We didn't expect things right now. There was no refrigeration. There was no, our nearest little grocery store was 63 miles away. And so we just worked together. We didn't feel like we were deprived. We didn't feel like we were sacrificing. We were just there to do a job in a common purpose with all the people in America who had sent us. We knew they were praying for us. We had no doubt about that. Like I said, we didn't get the mail very often, but we knew people were praying. We knew that we were in this together, and certainly it brought a dependence on God that I don't know that we had felt as much before. And the beauty back then too was the family relationships and the family units. And I think the key to surviving was the family was one unit. Mom and dad were there, the children were there with mom and dad, and they were in this together.
So how do we come out of that situation and say to us today, boy, I'm feeling lonely, I'm self-quarantined, but several things you pointed out, Ziden, I think you'd agree, is that number one, you knew you had a church family from America that sent you, number one. Number two is you had this purpose and drive from God that we wanted to help others know who Jesus was. And you were in a context with the African communal living that said, we are all one in this together here. So applying that today between your journey as a young chap and the shortages and sharing and saying, we can get through this. We can live on a lot less than we think we can get by with a lot less than we can. And then as a young missionary family going overseas and feeling a little bit isolated in that way, these elements that we feel today of isolation, how did God work in that area of your life? And what would you say to people today and say, what are the corollaries?
It's hard for us, or for me, to grasp the public perception and how media and the message of media has been manipulated to the point that they've got all the world in a panic. And it's this perception thing. We've gone through, at least I have gone through the days of the measles epidemic, really.
That'd be another good example.
And, we had measles outbreaks. Schools were closed because of that. We've had flu outbreaks, which still happens now. But we felt like we were together in this. And of course, the beauty now is that media, though it creates panic,
on the one side,
media on the other side is a marvelous thing, where if we can't meet together in a church building, we meet together online. We do on live, do live streaming. And so there are some great blessings. We can be confident that God is still in control. We can be confident that other people are praying. But when you're actually looking at these things, FaceTime or on a Zoom conference or other things, there are many ways of coping with this. I mean, there's no need for panic.
Right.
It's a matter of trusting God and just taking it a day at a time.
So true, and we've been here before, right, Ziden? I mean, you're saying with the shortages due to war, the pandemics of measles and other kinds of things, it may have been a season, but we've been here before as human beings and as humanity. And so this is just one more time, and God has given us technology, just like you said. I mean, we can have the interaction and have the fellowship in the body life by having worship online. We have what we do here at Good News. We're talking with 16 centers around the world simultaneously because of the computer and because of things like Zoom and the internet and so forth. Tell me a little bit also in your own personal life about, how you and Helen to minister to people this week. I know you've got a fabulous following on Facebook. Here you are in your 80s and still have a dynamic relationship with hundreds of people. You're not isolated. No. The coronavirus may have cut your legs off in not being able to travel so far, metaphorically, but it hasn't taken your voice away at all. Talk about how you use your voice over Facebook to minister to people.
Well, I think we've only got maybe 2,400 friends on Facebook. I mean, others, I know some who have 4,000. Okay. But there's a real ministry there, I think, where we can share what God is doing around the world. And I guess I'm old enough and stubborn enough or whatever that I still write a lot of cards and letters. And so right along, I'm in constant communication with many people around the world. Email is just a marvelous thing. FaceTime is great. And in fact, I wrote several letters last night and this morning as well. I wrote another one this morning to a lady that's just put in a nursing home in Raleigh, North Carolina. Alzheimer's, but she still knows people. And her husband, who can't even visit her now, he can talk to her on the phone. He said, you go ahead and write the letter. He said, we'll read it to her. Good. And so, bless her heart, she's there. Her husband can't visit her. No other one can. We canceled our trip to go and see them. But letters, frequent cards, email, they mean so much.
Calls, texts,
yes.
All those things. I mean, we can be isolated and feel, man, there's just nothing I can do. And we're going, what are you holding in your hand? A phone. We can call, we can text. What are you doing with your computer? We can go ahead and do things reaching out with Facebook and so forth. And it's not the fact that we have to be thinking of us as a church that now can't meet, that we're immobilized. We're the church, and we are always the church as people. It doesn't depend on a structure, a building, a campus, a systemized worship facility. We are the church wherever we find ourselves, and God has put these tools like never before to reach out to people. And you do a marvelous job of that. My goodness, thousands that you say that you have as followers, and I know you're weekly talking with people on email and so forth. And I know myself, one of the things that I've enjoyed recently has been after running and then having a cup of coffee, I'll sit in the chair, and after I did my Bible reading, Ziden, I have one of the apps called WhatsApp that allows me to go ahead and text to people. One moment it's somebody in Germany, the next moment it's somebody in India, and next moment it's somebody in South America. And I did that all on my first cup of coffee, and they've communicated back and said, Mike, how did you know? Thank you for praying. This is what we're doing with our day. And the body of Christ, because of technology, has been able to be this interconnected oneness, like you described, that you experienced during the war, or that you experienced through the measles outbreak, or that you experienced, you and Helen, working with the nationals there in Africa and working with them. So what would you say in closing for today? Just say, Mike, and to those who are listening, these are things that I want to encourage us, irregardless of our age, that we can be the church. And because we have technology, what would you tell people? Use your technology. What would you say?
Oh, I'd definitely say use your technology. I think of people under severe persecution now, and prisoners during World War II, prisoners even now, that are there because of their faith. But all of a sudden, prisoners are communicating by learning tapping on the wall, not just the Morse code, but they've learned their own ways of of communication. So regardless of what situation we are in, there are always ways to cope as we cast all our cares on God who cares for us. He'll get us through this like He's got us through many things, whether we're in prison, whether we're without milk or eggs or whatever. There's always a way if we care enough for God to, come into our lives and direct us and depend on Him. And if we care enough for one another, we certainly need to care for one another. And when everything else fails, love never fails.
Amen. Ziden, I'm going to be a little personal here. You're a little older than I am, okay? But one of the questions, and I'm on that side too, really, a little bit, is they're saying that for those of us that are in 60 and on up, 70 and 80 and beyond, we're the more vulnerable population. So being in that more vulnerable population, tell us how you and Helen are coping. What's life look like? What are you doing? Do you feel like you're living, secluded away and just kind of biding your time until the release is there? Or what are you doing? What's God using you, and how's He using you even today, even though you're in the vulnerable age bracket, if you will?
Helen and I really don't feel any different now than we did 10 years ago.
Good for you.
I mean, of course, 10 years ago I was 73, now I'm 83.
Okay, but you're a good 83.
And I am vulnerable to a whole bunch of stuff.
Sure.
And I can't help but think of the Apostle Paul, who said to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. I've lived my whole life from a child thinking that one day I'll get to go to heaven.
Yeah.
This coronavirus, statistically and medically, is said to be no more worse than anything else. Whether I die of, the flu, pneumonia, there are several things, because it is the point when the man wants to die, then the judgment. And I realize that this corruptible must put on incorruption, this mortal must put on immortality. So then, when this corruptible shall have put on incorruption, and this mortal shall have put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying, death is swallowed up in victory. So I don't fear death, but I don't fear this virus now that they've labeled, coronavirus, any more than other things. I don't fear them because it's going to come. Yes, I realize I'm more vulnerable, a heart condition. There are several things going on, but this particular virus, it's really confusing to Helen and me, because they tell us it's no more deadly than anything else. The symptoms are there like normal flu. It's just you can catch it more easily. So we take a few precautions. We still live just like we've been living. I'm still in contact with hundreds of people every week. And it may not be in a church gathering in a particular building, but like you said, the church is still there. And the church will be stronger because of this.
Absolutely.
I mean, all these churches that are saying, our church life is greatly enhanced by our small group meetings. Well, it's just that the world now and the media has sort of forced us into meeting in small groups. Some say under 10, CDC I think says under 50, but we meet in small groups, and maybe that's where more ministry really takes place, in sharing our compassion and bearing one another's burdens that we don't do when 1,000 are gathered in a building.
So you're saying to us, Ziden, that, I really don't feel any more vulnerable now that I know about the coronavirus than I did yesterday. And as a result, I'm not being silly, but I'm still meeting with my neighbors. I'm still writing hundreds of emails to people and making phone calls. I'm still meeting in small groups with my wife and others. I'm still praying for the church at large. And so, it could be anything. It could be a heart condition. It could be an accident. But loved your quoting of Scripture. And what a comfort to tell all of us that is the reminder that Paul, who himself was quarantined, right? I mean, there he was in prison. And out of that quarantine, he reached out to the churches of his day with letters, not email, not text message, with letters. And we kind of read them still. And you just quoted part of what Paul wrote, possibly when he was either on his journeys or in quarantine as well, in prison. And so, good reminders, good reminders. Anything else you want to add?
Well, without that quarantine, as you call it, without that, would he have written the letters that he did?
That's a good question.
Without what's going on in the world today, would we be caring for each other as much as we do and making sure that the ones who are vulnerable, over 60 especially, making sure that they are taken care of? It's amazing what's being done. I mean, stores saying, look, we're going to reserve the first hour we're open for those over 60. People are becoming more sensitive now, which may be one of the great things that comes out of this. God uses everything, I think, to make better things come. And he'll make good out of this situation as long as we keep focusing on him, that he is in control, and we keep loving him and loving one another.
All things work together for good.
Right.
All things.
Exactly.
And that's the case with coronavirus as well. Ziden, thank you for sharing your heart, your life. Greetings to Helen. And we're going to be sharing with other people in the next couple of weeks as well. So we want to invite you to stay tuned and stay connected with us as we continue to talk to people in how they're processing and living like Ziden and Helen are in this kind of tumultuous time with the coronavirus, and how life is going on, and maybe in some cases even lessons are being learned that are helpful for all of us to be more like Jesus than we ever thought. So thank you very much. Have a great day.